You're listening to Your Purpose and Business podcast, where we connect you to possibilities. I'm your host, Raquel Walters, a two-time best-selling author, millennial speaker, corporate trainer, advocate, and clinical social worker at heart. Your Purpose and Business podcast will connect you with everyday successful people who will share their impactful stories, insights, challenges, failures, and triumphs on how they're navigating the working world, whether by climbing the 9-to-5 corporate ladder or starting, growing, and scaling their business. So grab your pen and notebook because you'll want to implement the nuggets and tools, strategies shared in every episode. Class is in session. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Your Purpose and Business podcast. I'm so honored today to be introducing to you all Patricia Green Rogers. Patricia Green has founded the Patricia Green Group, LLC, that was established in Brookville, Maryland in 2003 as an outgrowth of IC Linkages, LLC, a relationship marketing and public relations firm. The Patricia Green Group, an award-winning public relations agency, relocated to Littletown, PA in 2017. Patricia Green, the founder, has more than 40 years of public relations experience. Over the years, the Patricia Green Group has expanded its reach and reputation, increasing its portfolio of corporate, governmental, small business, and nonprofit clients. Patricia provided PR consultation to Chester Engineers, a Pittsburgh-based engineering corporation that specializes in wastewater treatment and management. She executive produced the Virginia Icon, a statewide vocal music competition for teenagers. Patricia secured R&B recording artist and Petersburg, Virginia native Trey Songz, who appeared pro bono, as well as Patricia represented Dr. Donda West, mother of Kanye West, and organized her UK book tour working with UK partners. She also organized trade missions to the UK. President George W. Bush and Ambassador Robert H. Tuttle recognized Patricia for organizing trade missions to the UK for women entrepreneurs desiring linkages with UK women business owners. Brooklyn, New York Congressman Adolphus Towns cited Patricia's contributions to global bridge building in the congressional record. Patricia was also listed among 50 PR game changers in 2017. In addition to this, the Patricia Green Group, Patricia co-owns Stones of Scones Farm, a historic property in central Pennsylvania. Mrs. Green Rogers, it is an honor again to have you on the Your Purpose and Business podcast. I know that you're very, very busy, and I am very grateful and humbled that you made time out for us. And what an impressive resume, life story, bio, experience, all of that. Welcome tonight.
I just remembered I should turn my phone down.
That's okay.
Yeah. Well, Patricia is 70 years old, so that means she has been busy for quite a while. So, I don't want to be pompous, if you will, but I have followed my purpose. I've done things that I wanted to do through my lifetime, and a lot of it has to do with looking at things from an artistic perspective, which we say art doesn't have anything to do with business, if you will. So the business of art, most times people who are artists have representatives to move their art. However, for me, I have blended my artistic self with my PR self and my community engagement self. I've integrated basically three unlikely disciplines. I have a master's in social work with a concentration in community organization and social planning. So that's the engagement, the people-to-people connectivity. Right. I have a master's in public relations, and that allows me to know how to use media gatekeepers and other influencers to get my clients' message before their targeted audiences. And all of that is done through an artist's lens.
Yes.
That's the way I can put it.
No, that's impressive. And so for those who are up and coming in college, or trying to find their way, trying to find some sort of path in their life journey, and thinking that I have too many interests, and the old adage, you go to school, you pick one career, you work in that career, and you retire. That's not your story.
No, and I was raised in Richmond, Virginia during segregation. So I guess one would say I was somewhat eccentric.
Mhm.
Um, I just saw things differently. And even in segregation, I was trying to build some bridges where I could with people who were different from me culturally and ethnically and racially. And so I guess you would say with all of that as a part of my grounding of, as I say, why I am here, I'm not surprised that I've had such a diverse portfolio of different kinds of clients, and I'm able to satisfy the needs of all of them because I have a foundation that says people do things for people,
Mhm.
relationships matter, and that's really how I define my success, particularly moving me where I am now in central Pennsylvania. I got married and I moved to central Pennsylvania near Gettysburg. This was a very unlikely place for me to live. There is limited diversity here. And I found my place. I'm on 4 boards. I'm publicity chair for one organization. I'm connected with Gettysburg College with a community college board. I basically don't see the barriers.
Mhm.
And the barriers are there. They
Yeah.
are definitely there. You can go into a room, if you're the only one in the room who looks like you, sometimes you can't hear a pin drop.
Mhm.
The bottom line is that you have a right to be there. You have the core competencies. And so you prove yourself by just being yourself.
And you said a lot there, and it got me thinking because, especially you mentioned growing up in a time, the time that you grew up in, it was a little bit different. And to some extent, some people are saying we are going backwards instead of going forward. Um, but what, if anything, whether it was your background growing up, how you were raised, what triggered that interest in you, the different interests and that lens or perspective that you have of the world in order to navigate it and pursue these different interests? Does that make sense?
It does make sense. And we all have a story. So
Mm-hmm.
this is my story. My story is I said I was raised in segregation. My mother was a domestic worker. She cleaned white homes in Richmond. My father worked for the post office. That said, I was crossing bridges as early as 4 years old because when my mother didn't have anyone to watch me, she had to take me to the different homes with her because I hadn't started school yet. And one of those homes had a little girl named Catherine. And I tell this story a lot because they sent me Catherine's dresses. They sent me her phonograph records, her phonograph player. They sent me her books. And I was enthralled by the books because these were books with white kids who were very happy and white picket fence. And that was a big difference from my neighborhood. We lived comfortably, but within our city block, there were people who did not have inside toilets, who had outhouses in their backyards. There were kids who you could tell that in school, when I went to school, they had minimal money because they didn't even have lunch. And I started giving kids my lunch every day when I entered kindergarten. And so the bottom line is that I saw the world that we were denied. And I saw a community of people who were being judged unfairly by law. And I did not like what I saw. And I said, as a little girl, I want to be the change. And it's kind of hard for your family to understand that. But I would do things like take my pad and my pencil, and I would go around the neighborhood and draw the neighbors
Mm-hmm.
because I was an artist. And I felt if I did something nice for them, something to gift them that represented who they were, not who they were told they were, that they would feel good about themselves. And they did feel good about themselves with this little girl drawing their faces and talking with them. And in talking to them, I got to hear their stories. Now, I mentioned Catherine. What happened when I went to their home, Catherine had new books because she had given me her old books. And we would sit side by side. She would read a page, I would read a page. Invariably, she stumbled over her pages. She didn't know the words as well as I did because I was constantly reading the books over and over and over that they had given me. Pages were crumbling. I was just enthralled by this world beyond my village.
Mm-hmm.
And so the bottom line is Catherine would not say to me, Patricia, I don't know that word. She would say to me, Patricia, why don't you read this page?
Wow.
And I'd read the page. And so Catherine's mother observed this, and she asked my mother, how did I learn to read so well? And this is something I learned when we were on the bus going home from her job one day. And I said, well, Mama, if they gave me Catherine's books and I love to read and I read better than Catherine, why wouldn't I read well? Because they gave me the books. They gave me the opportunity to be better at who I am.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, in knowing they gave me the books, they still could not conceptualize why I
Read it.
was better than the little white girl.
Wow.
And so all of that made me feel good. Again, I was 4 at that time. I felt good that this white woman recognized subliminally that I read better than her daughter, and I was a child of segregation. She had the opportunities. And so I just continued that path. I went to segregated schools throughout high school. I went to an HBCU, an historically Black college. I'd wanted to go to art school, but my parents told me I couldn't. But then after that, my graduate degrees, my 2 master's degrees were both from predominantly white colleges. And I started just building those bridges. I had all that body of knowledge and all that passion for my purpose. And I was able to connect with people across differences, whatever the differences were, because I felt I shouldn't judge. It was just that simple. We all have our life stories which influence our behavior, our perceptions of each other. Unless you start the dialogue and realize our similarities are stronger than our differences in many ways, if you don't start the dialogue, you don't see the common ground.
Mm-hmm.
And that's hard. You asked that question. I hope I'm not talking too much, and I hope you're understanding what I'm saying. All of what I said to you is very different for a little girl who was raised in segregated Richmond, the capital of the Confederacy. And no doubt, my friends now say to me, but Patricia, you were always different. In other words, that's why you gave me a color scheme on class night, because you told me my colors weren't matching. And I didn't understand. I did not understand what that meant. I was wearing stripes and polka dots and plaids. I looked in the wardrobe. I saw the bright colors. I wasn't looking at the patterns. And they teased me. And they color scheme. And now they're on the runway. Those are the fashions on the runway.
Runway today, right. And it's interesting that you even said that, because as you're talking, I'm absorbing on, oh my gosh, you're such an awesome storyteller. I was thinking about that time that you grew up with. Were there in building, I should say, those bridges, were there any challenges or barriers? Because there must have been, while you were transitioning from, going to a historically Black college, then going on to get your master's degrees from 2 different prevalently white colleges, and going about, pursuing your goals. Were there hurdles in your way, challenges, if any, that you would want to share with us?
Well, yeah, there were challenges. And sometimes I didn't know what world I belonged in. Because I had built these bridges across cultural differences, when I was around people who are part of my culture, I might have a point of reference or a story, if you will, that would be foreign in terms of something that happened by virtue of being in a, say, white setting, or studying Navajo and Hopi Indian cultures for a month in Durango, Colorado. So I was talking about the Grand Canyon. And some of them said, Patricia, you act white.
Right, exactly. That's what I was about to say to you. You're an outsider.
But I always was conscious of who I am. I never wanted to wear my hair pressed, if you will. I wore the cloth, if you will. I was not being fake. I was being totally authentic in the things that represented who I was. But it was confusing to those of us who have not ventured into those kinds of relationships. Conversely, being on that other side, particularly in when I was director of public relations at La Roche College,
Mm-hmm.
there were some unique challenges. I was the first African American director of PR for a white college in Western Pennsylvania. I was hired by white folks. I was a part of an interview, a group interview of department heads and the president, an all day interview. There were three of us. I
Wow.
don't know the other candidates, but they were white. And
Mm-hmm.
I was hired.
Yes,
And obviously, I had to be better than any of them.
exactly.
And
Mm-hmm.
it was a challenge because there was some covert racism within the institution among some department heads who did not want me to create their PR packages. I went in there and I saw a view book that had no diversity in it, and I wanted to educate them on the importance of having diversity in a recruitment tool.
Mm-hmm.
And ultimately, all I could do, I couldn't change content, I changed some pictures. But the more I stayed true to my purpose, the
Yeah.
more I garnered visibility for the college, not just locally and nationally, but globally. When they brought in students from Eastern Europe, the more they saw what I was able to do,
Mm-hmm.
the more they just left me alone.
Wow, wow. And I have to say this to the audience as well. I was also a product of that for bringing in diverse um, students from all over the world because it also reached the Caribbean as well. And by the time I got to La Roche College, which is now La Roche University, I was able to learn from different cultures, different walks of life, and it helped me to develop my cultural competency, if you
Yeah.
will, with relating to different types of people. I mean, at the end of the day, we're all one, but the different backgrounds, the culture, etc. So
And I
thanks to you too, Patricia. Yeah.
just add, based on what you said,
Mm-hmm.
that these kinds of challenges are not just unique to African Americans,
Mm-hmm.
because with respect to the Eastern European students, there were people who did not want them to speak in their languages when they were in social conversations with each other, who would say, in one case, speak English, is what one of the professors said as she was walking past them. And everybody came in my office. It's like the doctor is in. So no matter
Yeah.
matter what, it didn't matter the ethnic group or what have you. They knew that they had a listening ear in me. And this is how I learned that, they too had some challenges in some cases in blending with the prevailing culture of the
Mm-hmm.
college.
Mm-hmm. And let's speak to, if you will, even in 2020, such a time as this, that the world seemed to have gone backwards instead of forward. At one point, it felt as if it was moving forward in the right direction. Everybody's more sensitive towards culture, background, religion. Not to get too deep into it, but for some reason, it feels that things are going backwards. And based on your experience and your years, Patricia, what are your thoughts on that? What do you think?
Well, I live in central Pennsylvania, and this is this site of the bloodiest battle on U.S. shores, the Civil War. And when you things do appear to be going backwards, but because sometimes you have isolation. I mean, we look at Pennsylvania as a state, you have the two major cities are Pittsburgh and Philadelphia. There's a lot of rural areas of Pennsylvania. I have found some areas in central Pennsylvania that I didn't even know existed because there were no people like me there to draw me there.
Right.
And so, where you have people, in most cases, we all want the same thing. But I don't want to be political, but when you have a person who is divisive, and that person is a leader, and people are struggling, because I've done consulting in rural parts of Virginia, and it doesn't matter what color, is poverty where you have no jobs.
Mm-hmm.
It's health issues where you have the chief employer is a pollutant, if you will, but people have to work. and the cancer rates are high, and it's predisposed to be such as that because of the company that has pollutants. So these are people who don't look like me in large numbers, but who are suffering. And when someone comes and says, I'm going to save you, that this is the problem, they're the problem, immigration or what have you is the problem, crime in the inner city is the problem. When you use the code words, this is, messaging, if you will. PR people can counter negative messaging, or they can produce negative messaging. So, I mean, I understand from a PR perspective what is going on in terms of how opinions are being molded and how it's building discord. But I'm here, and I think life was bringing me right here where I am now to be the light of change.
Right.
And I'm not trying to be the light, I'm just being myself. And I have developed some very strong relationships with people that I probably would have never in my lifetime met other than being here.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
Did I answer your question?
Yeah, you did. And I think my lead on question is for some people who are struggling with that, especially we see it a lot in corporate, for those who are in corporate, and even to some extent businesses. But let me speak specifically to corporate, where especially a young Black woman or older Black woman, because I've seen different from different angles, if you may, where I've spoken to more mature women in corporate, and they've tried to get managerial positions that have been turned down. Even from mid-career women, 15 years in, 10 to 15 years in. What would you say to them so that they're not discouraged after trying to seek out a promotion and being constantly turned down? And it may just be, even if they don't have the evidence, that it's because of the color of their skin or how they look, or because they're a female, or because they're from not from this country. Like, what would you say to those people who are trying to thrive within the corporate environment?
Yes. And it can be challenging. And then conversely, there are situations where African American and other women of color are prospering in the corporate sector. I go to a conference every year called the Pennsylvania Conference for Women. It's held in Philadelphia every year. And the lead speakers are often African American women working for major corporations in key positions. I don't know if it's a challenge. A lot of them have written books. So sometimes you can use your adversity as a catalyst for doing something beyond your adversity. I mean, you don't have to stay in that setting, or you might be the person that they send out for Black History Month, or that they show as an expression of diversity. So how do you leverage that whereby
Right.
you benefit from that? It's not just them setting the agenda for you.
And it's really about seeking out that opportunity and pitching too, and presenting it in a different perspective to the right decision makers.
Right.
Yeah. And I think that for a lot of females, and let me just speak to even as a millennial within the corporate space as well, I think that, and the cries I've heard from my colleagues is that they feel as if they're not being heard, they're not being respected. But at the same time, when they do have superiors that are in certain position, they feel as if they're not being looked after, so to speak. And I will say it in quotation. And what that really means is that there's no true pathway that's being created. It's sort of like the doors, or the elevator doors, have been shut.
Right. And I'm a baby boomer, and I have two millennials, a male and female, son, daughter. There seems to be a disconnect in the communication very often between baby boomers and millennials, and this is what I've heard from other friends of mine. I think that I always say we started the fire, but if we want to look at some millennials, some of them may know so much they don't leave room to be contributed to. And they have had the success. They've been in colleges, universities that when I was young, we were not admitted into, or maybe one of us. And they have had the education that prepares them for a world community. So in many ways, and I'm not trying to be negative, they've
No.
been indoctrinated into a white standard
Mhm.
for prosperity by virtue of education and social experiences. And then they find that they are Black,
Mhm.
or they are Hispanic, or they are some other kind of ethnic group. At the end of the day, they are not necessarily the chosen ones,
Mhm.
because there are white colleagues who will probably have more of an opportunity
Mhm.
or be
Yeah.
more preferred. So, there are African American mentors, there are other mentors of color who are available to help these young people who are in these positions, or in these companies, to navigate.
Mhm.
Because in my generation, we had to learn how to navigate. We were just entering in Richmond. You're talking about the 1964 civil rights legislation. I was in junior high school. So my point is, we were the pioneers in what was hostile territory.
Mhm.
And then you had Black rights, and you had a lot going on in the 60s. And
Mhm.
we were bombarded with a whole lot, which gave us the ability to decide which way we're going to go.
Mhm. Go.
Because legally, we were, quote, free
Yeah.
now
Yeah.
to choose to be where we wanted to be. But in actuality, there were some challenges being there.
Right. And I loved how you broke that down, where, at the playing field, so to speak, it seemed like it was plain until you grew up, you left college or whatever, high school, and you enter into the working environment. And then you start realizing that this is really not all that we thought it would be. But the opportunity here is that creating opportunities for yourself, like looking at different angles in where you could elevate. And I just love how you brought that down. And I know as a baby boomer, um you, as well as your baby boomer friends, if I would should say that, have gone through much worse than what we're going through now. And so really my thing is that, and I probably get judged for this, there's really no excuse. you
Well,
know
I think we're here. I mean,
yeah.
we have some millennials who are like my children, if you will, and their mentor. And I enjoy being with them because they do have the fire in them, and
Mhm.
they have had these unique opportunities that were not possible when I was growing up. But conversely, I worked for the National Council of Negro Women.
Mhm.
And so I was mentored by Dr. Dorothy Height. I can give you a list of women who were prominent in their fields, who you're talking about women who were prominent in their fields in the 1940s.
Mhm.
And that said, when I saw them and sat at their feet, we had
Yeah.
much respect for them.
Yes.
Much
Yeah.
respect.
Yes.
Listen, understand, then act. I knew that I could not fail them.
Mhm.
Everything I do, they're in my head
Yeah. Mhm.
because they did. Dr. Height said, Black women don't always do what they want to do, but always do what they have to do.
Mm.
Mrs. Maida Springer Kemp, who was a member of the Garment Workers Union, who was mentored by A. Philip Randolph, who was the first African American woman, actually, she was born in Panama, to
Mhm.
represent the AFL CIO abroad, who, after the independence of all of the African countries, went to those countries and formed labor schools for the kids. She said to me, I think our madness is part of our survival.
Yeah.
Have to, you cannot let the other folks win when they're trying to make you lose.
Right.
You have to keep on keeping on,
on. Mm-hmm.
because if if you let other people define you, you've already lost.
Right, right. That's so true. And I feel like this is a much needed message too across the board for millennials, Generation X that's coming up behind us. I believe they're called Generation X. And everyone in general, that we have to keep on keeping on and keep fighting, and instead of sitting around waiting for the opportunities to go out and seek them.
And it can be isolating.
Yeah.
You may
Yeah.
not even, you don't want to be seen. I'm thinking of millennials. They're very talented. If they are in those kinds of occupations, they are super talented. Um, it could be hard when you are not being treated right. You can look at yourself as being, as doing something wrong. You got enough people who will tell you you are. But
Mm-hmm.
if you wouldn't be there if you were not amazing. You wouldn't be there if you were even better than some of your white colleagues.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So
that's true.
you have to process that and not isolate yourself, but be willing to speak to someone who can help you to know what kinds of decisions you want to make. I hear
Mhm.
there's a lot that goes on with how people wear their hair in these companies.
Yes.
I have never changed my hair, no matter what white place I worked in.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah.
I got locks now.
Yeah. Yeah,
But
and they're beautiful. But
yeah,
I do know there are some work environments, and they will tell you, even as a young millennial, I mean, I'm in my early 30s now, but they want you to present a certain way. And if you're looking like even now, I've seen the changes probably a year and a half, 2 years now, where my hair underneath this is natural. So when I'm not wearing protective styles, I wear my hair natural. And even at first, that was a little bit frowned upon. Like they didn't want the afro, they didn't want the twist. But depending on where you're working and the environment, then, and if there's a lot of you that's doing the same thing, then it becomes a part of a little bit accepted, and it becomes a part of the culture. But it doesn't happen over time.
so
If
how
you're
was
the only person,
it, and knowing how was that
yeah,
articulated to you?
it could be by looks, body language. And at times too, depending on the person, if they feel as if they can speak to you about it and you won't get that offended, they will pull you to the side and say, you have to present a certain way, have to be neat. Even in interviews, that's looked at really, because presentation, traditionally, you have to look a certain way, dress a certain way, your hair has to be a certain style. So but I do see that things are changing, at least for the organization that I work for, full time. There is a lot of people that are going natural and are wearing different type of natural hairstyles. I do myself too from time to time, and it's becoming a little bit more acceptable. However, if you are an observant person, depending on where you're going and where you're at and who's in certain meetings, you may see a certain look from, even, I have to say, I have to put out there, even from our own African Americans or Black Americans, I have to say it. Um,
I'm glad that I've aged out of all of that.
so it's a matter of, if you're gonna wear it, you wear it with confidence. If I mean, nowadays, obviously somebody cannot like really penalize you for it, because of, you could take them to HR, and discrimination, there's laws and everything that has always been there, but you have more power to exercise that more. But you are still conscientious of how you present yourself, depending on where you're going and who you're speaking to, and how you're representing the company.
Well,
um
I just love to see the young women on TV
yes.
who decided to go natural, because
Mhm.
that's money.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
that's
Yes.
advertisers. That's and just to do that is just so empowering.
Right, 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 definitely. So things are changing with that regard. However, not a lot of people are comfortable, wearing their hair naturally. And I think it just goes back to just the stigma behind it, and there's a lot of unlearning that needs to be done. Yeah, when it comes on to corporate. Um, but it's slowly moving forward as far as acceptance and equality and all of that, you know. And so, shifting gears a little bit, Patricia, I wanted to explore a little bit more about your PR. And I know you PR, you mix it with arts, and of course, engagement, communication. Um, where have that led you? And I know you still do PR. Would you speak a little bit about that, because you've crossed over into the creative music arena, but
Yes,
also represented
celebrity PR.
huge organizations, governments. Um,
Yeah, so I have a PR firm, as you mentioned earlier, the Patricia Green Group. And, um, PR is about, they say, getting your client media. PR is rooted in research because before you can shape a message for a defined public, you have to understand what motivates them, what moves them.
Mhm.
So, all of that said, I have done PR, as you mentioned earlier, for diverse kinds of clients. I got into celebrity PR by way of Dr. Donda West, Kanye's mom, who went to college with me. And I saw her at a book signing, and no one was there. Her publisher had not done the PR. So we talked a little, and she said, Patricia, I need you. And that led to the trip to England. Now, it was easy to get her a signing and to get Waterstone's books to order copies from Borders here and to get MTV Europe to be a sponsor because I had strategic partners over there already, because I had done trade missions to the UK for
Yeah.
about 2 to 3 years, where I took over women in business and African Americans and did linkages with their counterparts over there. So how did all of that happen though? PR, I mentioned, is research oriented. I knew I wanted to do this and I didn't know anyone in England. So I just Googled I Googled Black folks in
Yes.
England, Black folks in London, Black business women, and I came upon Yvonne Thompson. And her name kept coming up. And so I reached out to her, and that was my first trip there
Oh.
through the relationship I formed with Yvonne. And it was on the heels of the London Olympics. And so we were able to take some larger delegations there because people were interested in looking at how they could get into the Olympics pipeline with some strategic partners. So that is all PR.
Mhm.
Everything that I just said takes PR skills. PR is planned effort on the part of responsible management through two-way communications to build public awareness, understanding, and support. And embodied in that, I say, is a little bit of mind management
Yeah. Mhm.
because it's psychological.
Mhm.
PR people listen to their clients such that they can understand their clients and know best how to position them.
Mhm. Mhm.
So that's what I do. And I have relocated my firm to Stone of Scone Farm, where I live now, and we haven't touched on it,
Yes.
but Stone of Scone Farm is a property that goes back to the 1700s.
Mhm.
And there's a lot of history here that's tied to some important periods in the local towns, towns that were founded, had original inhabitants here. This farm was the second Pennsylvania land grant that was given by William Penn. They were originally German immigrants.
Mhm.
My husband is of Scottish heritage, and he
Mhm.
named it Stone of Scone Farm because the stone of Scone is the stone of destiny. It was
Wow.
used in all the royal coronations. Scottish until King Edward the First took it as a spoils of war and took it back to London. So the bottom line is they have their stone back now, but I say when you visit Stone of Stone Farm, you'll be treated like royalty.
Mhm.
And if you've seen the pictures, you know it's
Yes.
so
It's
serene.
beautiful. Mhm.
If we have people who want to have events here, we're working through some challenges with our township, but I have had non-paid events here just to bring people here who are stressed.
Yeah.
This is such a serene environment. And
Mhm.
so for anyone with a hurried kind of life, I know what that's like as a PR person. I have become so much more centered by breathing this air and looking at this nature.
Yeah. Wow, wow. And I have to say the Stones of Scone farm is beautiful. I've seen the pictures. I've seen some of the past events that you have up on your website in addition to your Facebook page, and it's beautiful. So this um journey or leg of your life, so to speak, is all about wellness. It sounds it's all about peace and serenity,
Yes,
and using your words, to feel centered and be centered.
yes.
And so, as far as legacy, what legacy would you? And I don't know if this is something that you've even thought of, but
Yeah, I have.
yeah,
I,
what legacy you think that you want to leave?
if people were to look at and understand my journey,
Mhm.
I have lived my
Yes,
life
yes.
on my own terms.
Mhm.
And I always say, I don't want to die an unlived life.
Mhm.
Life is finite. So life is that right? Finite or life
It's
is
it's 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 infinite. I
in
don't know, but they get the picture.
right. We're dying. We don't
Yeah,
know when we're going to die or how
yes.
we're going to die. And so it's not for me the length of life, it's the quality of life. And I think, some people go through life and at the end of life, they're miserable,
Mhm.
absolutely miserable. They feel like they have not fulfilled. But for me, part of not dying an unlived life is living a purposeful life.
Yeah.
I don't complain. I don't woe is me, because I decide my joy.
Mhm.
No one else decides my joy but me.
Mhm. Yes.
And I think that if I were to impart some inspiration, if you will,
Mhm.
it would be for your listeners, viewers, to begin to see the light in themselves,
Mhm.
because there will be detractors
Yes.
to try to dim your light, particularly when your light is shining the brightest. When you are on your path, you go back to that job where you're being treated a certain kind of way. Sometimes you're already outshining folks and they see it and they say, no, we're not going to let this happen.
Mhm.
But continue to shine your light and you will be marketable
Mhm.
out of that environment. But if you're stuck in your misery,
Yeah.
your detractors are happy.
Mhm. Yes, yes. That's it. Yes.
Don't
Mhm.
die an unlived life. It's lots of things to live for every day.
Right. Right, right. And your story thus far has been so beautiful, and it shows that you created the life that you wanted up to this point, and you still have many, many years of life to live. And it doesn't matter what interests you have, go out, seek it, because somehow it's woven in beautifully in your journey, in your life's journey. And so Mrs. Green Rogers, tell us how the audience can reach you, can contact you, and if there's any upcoming events.
Well, you can look at the Patricia Green Group. I have some interviews on with some empowering people. You might want to hear some of those stories of theirs as I interviewed them. Um, you can also go, if you're on Facebook, you can go to Patricia Evelyn Green, which is my inspirational page, and you can read some of my thoughts on different kinds of topics that relate to mind, body, spirit, wellness. You can also go to the Stone of Scone Farm page and see how I hang out at the farm to keep my calm in check.
Yeah.
Um, you can also go to the Patricia Green Group page, which is PR page. And if you want a friend request me, I'm under Patricia Evelyn Green Rogers. In terms of events, I basically don't have any events scheduled at this moment
Mhm.
because I am in the midst of some client work right now. I have some clients and some heavy deadlines. But what I'd like to do, one of the things that I'm planning to do, I'm working with a colleague in London
Mhm.
to recruit some folks who are interested in a trip to South Africa to do some work with populations of women and children who can really benefit from our service. So that's something that we want to do before the year is out. We're talking about it. And right now, most of what I want to do is to serve in a way that shows God's love, for one of the different way to put it. And I've had a good life, and I think at this stage of my life, I'm not quitting my PR, but I think I want to do more in service to humanity.
Yeah, thank you for that. And what's your website so the audience can?
PatriciaGreenGroup.com.
Awesome. Miss Patricia Green, it's been amazing, humbling. I am honored to be in your presence. And I've learned so much throughout this interview as well. And there is a lot of lessons and a lot of takeaway that not only that I've taken away, but also the audience definitely will. So again, I want to say many thanks to you, and we look forward to seeing more and hearing more from you and the Patricia Group, Green Group, sorry. And so, guys, thank you.
Yeah, if they'd like to contact me, email me, they can email me at Patricia@Stone, that's STONE of Scone, SCONE farm.com. So that's Patricia@stoneofsconefarm.com.
Awesome. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Your Purpose and Business podcast. Thank you. We'll catch you in the next episode. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening. If you've loved this episode, let's stay in touch. Head over to raquelwalters.com and subscribe to my email list so that I can send you updates on new episodes, exclusive motivational nuggets, and insider knowledge that's only shared when you join our community. Please don't forget to subscribe to this podcast and leave a review, as I want to know your thoughts about every episode. Follow me on Instagram at Your Purpose and Business Podcast. And remember, your life is beautiful, and this is a part of your journey. So embrace it. Speak to you soon.